When you look at your life, you already know something powerful. Your mood has stolen more dreams than any obstacle ever could. Your mood talks you out of greatness, whispers excuses, convinces you to wait, to slow down, to settle. But your plan is the roadmap to who you're capable of becoming. The moment you stop following how you feel and start following what you decided, everything changes. Your power returns, your momentum ignites, and you become unstoppable. Not because every day feels good, but because you refuse to let your emotions decide your destiny. Your feelings are going to rise and fall like waves. Some days you wake up ready to take on the world, and some days you feel like the world is taking you on. And that's exactly why you cannot build your future based on something as unstable as your mood. Moods shift by the hour. Emotions fluctuate with sleep, with weather, with stress, with a single message on your phone. But your plan, your vision, your purpose, that's the part of you that doesn't change. That's the part rooted in who you want to become, not how you feel in this moment. Every single person in this room has had days when they felt unstoppable and days when they didn't even want to start. And the only difference between those who grow and those who stay stuck is this: the ones who grow choose their plan over their mood. Think about how many life-changing decisions have been ruined, not by lack of knowledge, not by lack of opportunity, but simply by a temporary feeling. You felt tired, so you skipped the workout. You felt discouraged, so you didn't make the call. You felt overwhelmed, so you avoided the hard conversation. And in the moment, the mood always feels justified. It feels real. It feels like truth, but it's not truth. It's just a state. It's weather, moving, shifting, passing. Your plan is the mountain underneath. But when you let the weather dictate the elevation of your life, you'll never climb. Some people spend their entire lives waiting for the perfect mood, waiting to feel inspired, waiting to feel ready. And that's exactly why they stay where they are. Because readiness is not a feeling. Inspiration is not a feeling. Confidence is not a feeling. All of those things show up after you move, not before. You have to understand something. You don't get to the top by doing what feels good. You get to the top by doing what is aligned. Following your plan, even when you don't feel like it, is the foundation of self-mastery. That's the moment you declare, I am not ruled by passing emotions. I am ruled by purpose. And when you adopt that mindset, everything changes. Suddenly, you're not negotiating with yourself every morning. You're not asking, do I feel like it? You're telling yourself, this is what we do. You're training your mind to follow through. And once that becomes your identity, it becomes easier. Not because life is easier, but because you are stronger. There's going to be a day, maybe it's today, maybe it's next week, when everything inside you will say, take it easy. You've done enough. It's not that important. That voice is not you. That voice is your mood. That voice comes and goes. But there is another voice inside you, quiet but powerful, that says, I want more. I can be more. I refuse to settle. That voice doesn't shout. It whispers. And your job is to honor that whisper, especially on the days when you're tired, frustrated, or uninspired, because that whisper is your future self calling you forward. Your mood is trying to protect your comfort. Your plan is trying to build your destiny. And you have to choose which one gets the steering wheel. A lot of people think success belongs to those who feel positive all the time, but the truth is, success belongs to those who act independent of how they feel. Think of any champion, any leader, any high performer. They're not special because they always feel good. They're special because they execute whether they feel good or not. The moment you stop waiting for emotional permission, you become unstoppable. When you show up on the days you don't want to, you earn a kind of respect for yourself that no compliment, no applause, no external validation can match. That respect becomes the quiet foundation of your confidence. You start to trust yourself deeply because you've proven that you don't break promises to yourself based on mood. And when you trust yourself, you become dangerous in the best way. You move differently. You make decisions faster. You stop hesitating. You build momentum. You feel proud, not because of outcomes, but because you honored your plan. Every time you choose your plan over your mood, you weaken the grip of procrastination, self-doubt, laziness, and fear. You start breaking old emotional patterns that kept you small. You stop giving power to excuses that sound reasonable, but are really just mood-based lies. You start shifting from, I feel like it, to, I do it because it's aligned. That's when you step into a higher version of yourself. And that version is not controlled by how you woke up today, or what someone said, or whether you're excited or bored or tired. That version is controlled by clarity, purpose, direction, vision. So when you hear people say, follow your heart, that's beautiful. But follow your heart with a plan. Follow your purpose with discipline. Follow your dreams with structure. Because without a plan, your mood will always take the lead. And moods are terrible leaders. They're impulsive, emotional, inconsistent. Your plan is the leader you chose with intention. Your plan was born from the best version of you, and the best version of you deserves to be in charge. Your feelings are visitors. They come and go. Your vision is home. That's where you're supposed to live. And if you can remember that, if you can remind yourself every single day that feelings aren't facts, moods aren't mandates, and your plan is the real path, you will create a level of consistency that most people never experience. Consistency creates progress. Progress creates confidence. Confidence creates momentum, and momentum creates a life you're proud of. But it all starts with a single decision. I follow my plan, not my mood. That's how you build a life that rises instead of collapses. Motivation feels amazing when it's there. It lifts you, it pushes you, it makes everything seem possible. But discipline is what takes over when motivation disappears. And let's be honest with each other, motivation always disappears. It's supposed to. It's a spark. It's not the fire. Discipline is the fire. Discipline is the thing that keeps burning, even on the days when you don't feel inspired, when you don't feel strong, when you don't feel like doing a single thing. Discipline is the bridge between where you stand right now and the future you say you want. And if that future matters to you at all, then you must learn to walk across that bridge every single day, especially when your mood is trying to pull you in the opposite direction. Look back at every moment in your life where you created real change. It wasn't because you felt great. It wasn't because everything around you was perfect. It was because you made a decision, maybe a small one, maybe a painful one, but you followed through. You did something when you could have easily chosen comfort instead. And that moment, that choice, that action, that's discipline. Discipline isn't punishment. It isn't rigidity. It isn't forcing yourself to suffer. Discipline is self-respect in action. It's the part of you that says, I deserve more than what my temporary feelings are trying to convince me of right now. Discipline is the internal muscle that grows every time you show up when you don't want to. And the stronger that muscle gets, the easier it becomes to trust yourself. Every single person in this room has had a burst of motivation before. Maybe you watched something inspiring. Maybe you heard a story that fired you up. Maybe you had a moment where you looked in the mirror and said, that's it. No more excuses. And for a few days, maybe even a few weeks, you were unstoppable. But then life happened. Stress rolled in, fatigue kicked in, distraction showed up, that initial spark faded, and then what happened? This is the part no one likes to talk about because this is where most people fall off. Not because they're weak, not because they're lazy, but because they never built the discipline to carry them through the slump. They relied on motivation alone. Motivation can start your journey, but discipline finishes it. The people who accomplish the extraordinary aren't always the most gifted or the most talented. Many times they're not even the most confident. They're the ones who decided no matter how I feel, I'm going to do what I said I would do. And that decision becomes their identity. They don't sit around waiting for inspiration. They don't negotiate with themselves every morning. They move, they act, they execute. When the alarm goes off, when the work gets boring, when the challenge gets uncomfortable, discipline says, we keep going. And when you build that habit, when you show up repeatedly, you create a kind of internal power that becomes impossible to break. Think of discipline as the pathway between your current life and your future life. On one side, you have your dreams, your goals, your potential, that version of you can feel deep inside. On the other side, you have your present reality. And the path that connects the two, that's the path of disciplined action. Now, here's the truth. Most people never walk that path long enough to reach the other side. They take a few steps, get frustrated, turn around. They take a few more steps, get distracted, turn around. They wait for the perfect day to start again. And in that start-stop cycle, years pass. Their vision stays exactly where it started, in their imagination. But the people who walk that bridge all the way across are not special. They're simply consistent. They show up, they do the small tasks, they honor the plan even when their mood screams, not today. And step by step, day by day, repetition after repetition, they cross that bridge. And when they arrive, people around them call it luck. They call it talent. They call it natural ability. No, it was discipline. It was the willingness to do the unexciting things, the willingness to stick to the plan when the mood tried to pull them off course. And that's the secret no one wants to admit. Discipline isn't glamorous. It isn't flashy. It doesn't get applause. Most of the time, it looks like boredom, routine, repetition. But that's where greatness is built. That's where identity is built. That's where a person transforms. If you can discipline your mind, your actions, your patterns, you gain a kind of freedom most people never experience because suddenly you're not held hostage by how you feel. You're not trapped by procrastination. You're not controlled by impulses. You're guided by vision, not emotion. And here's the beautiful part. Discipline doesn't make your life harder. It makes your life clearer. You don't waste time debating with yourself. You don't overthink. You don't stall. You execute. You move. And as you move, something incredible happens. You start to trust yourself more. You start to feel proud of who you're becoming. You start to feel stronger, not because someone told you, but because you proved it to yourself in the moments no one else saw. Discipline builds momentum. Momentum builds confidence. Confidence builds identity. And identity builds a life you once thought was out of reach. But it all starts with that simple choice. Do I follow the plan or do I follow the mood? Every time you choose the plan, even in a small way, you add one more brick to the bridge leading you to your future. And that is exactly how you close the gap between the life you have and the life you want. Success has never been about the person who shows up when everything feels right. Anyone can perform when the mood is good, when the energy is high, when life is smooth. That doesn't require strength. That doesn't require commitment. The real difference, the real separation, the real gap between the people who rise and the people who stay stuck is consistency, not occasional greatness, consistent effort, not once in a while, every single day. And that simple truth is what so many people misunderstand. They think success is this big dramatic moment where everything changes, but succeed. SS is quiet. It's built in the daily choices no one sees, the small actions repeated again and again until they become part of who you are. Look at the people you admire, the ones who inspire you, the ones who seem unstoppable. They're not superhuman. They're not overflowing with motivation 24/7. They're consistent. They've learned to show up on the days when their mood is completely against them. They've learned to move even when they don't feel powerful. They've learned to stick to their plan even when their emotions are all over the place, because they understand something most people never learn. Mood is unreliable, but consistency builds momentum, and momentum builds success. You don't win because you feel good. You win because you keep going. The problem with most people isn't lack of talent or potential. It's the stop-start pattern. They sprint 1 week, disappear the next week. They go hard for 3 days, then vanish for 10. And you cannot build anything meaningful that way. You can't transform your body, your finances, your relationships, your mindset. Nothing grows with a pattern of inconsistency. Imagine watering a plant once a week with a fire hose and then ignoring it for the next 6 days. That plant won't thrive, no matter how intense that one burst was. And that's exactly how most people live. They give maximum intensity for a moment, but no consistency over time. The people who excel understand that small efforts, repeated daily, outperform bursts of intensity every single time. They build routines, they build patterns, they build habits. They don't wait for the perfect moment because they know there is no perfect moment. They don't wait for motivation because they know it's unreliable. They don't wait for clarity because clarity comes from action. They simply show up. Even if the effort is small, they show up. Even if they're tired, they show you. Even if the progress is slow, they show up. And that repetition becomes part of their identity. You have to realize that your mood is not the measure of your potential. Some days you will feel like doing everything. Other days you will feel like doing nothing. But consistency requires you to act beyond the feeling. It requires you to choose your plan instead of your comfort. And if you train yourself to do that, not perfectly, but consistently, you become powerful in a way most people never experience. You build an internal strength that cannot be shaken by a bad mood, a stressful day, or a moment of doubt. Think about how many times in your life you've started something with excitement and passion. You felt that surge of inspiration. You said, this time I'm all in. And for a few days, maybe a few weeks, you were unstoppable. But then what happened? You hit a dip. You got distracted, your mood shifted, life pulled you sideways, and suddenly you weren't showing up the same way, not because you lacked ability, but because you lacked consistency. The dip is where most people quit, but the dip is also where champions are made. That dip, the moment you don't feel like continuing, is the exact moment that determines whether you're occasional or consistent, whether you stay average or rise above. Consistency doesn't mean perfection. It means refusing to quit. It means doing something, even if it's small. It means keeping the momentum alive. When you're consistent, you don't break the chain. The actions may vary in intensity, but the commitment stays the same. You may give 100% one day, 60% the next, but you give something. And the people who give something every day will always outperform the ones who give everything once in a while. The truth is, consistency is not glamorous. It's not exciting. It doesn't always feel good. Sometimes it feels repetitive. Sometimes it feels slow. Sometimes it feels like you're not making progress at all. But that's the illusion. Progress is always happening beneath the surface. Every repetition is strengthening you. Every small action is building resilience. Every step, even the tiny ones, is moving you forward. And then one day, after weeks or months or years of showing up, you look back and realize how far you've come, not because of one big effort, but because you stayed consistent while others quit. The danger of being occasional is that you live your life in cycles of starting and stopping. You get excited, you push, you crash, you restart. And every time you restart, you lose time, you lose momentum, you lose confidence. You start doubting yourself. You start believing you're the problem, but you're not the problem. Your pattern is, and patterns can be changed. You just have to commit to the boring parts, the repetitive parts, the non-motivating parts. That's where growth happens. That's where character is built. When you become consistent, when you truly commit to showing up regardless of mood, you develop a kind of stability inside yourself. You become reliable to yourself. And that reliability creates confidence, not the loud kind, the quiet kind, the kind that says, I do what I say. I follow through. I don't abandon my goals just because my feelings fluctuate. That kind of confidence is rare and it's powerful. Success belongs to the consistent, not the occasional. Your mood will always try to negotiate with you. It will try to pull you into comfort, into delay, into avoidance. It will whisper reasons that sound logical, emotional, convincing. Rest a little longer. You don't have the energy today. You'll do it later. This isn't the right moment. And if you listen to that voice long enough, if you allow it to take the lead, you'll start living a life built on excuses that feel true, but aren't. That voice is not your enemy, but it is not your guide. It's the emotional version of you trying to protect you from discomfort, not move you toward growth. On the other hand, your commitments have no hidden agenda. They're clean, they're simple, they're rooted in the person you want to become. They represent the part of you that's clear, grounded, and honest, the part of you that on your highest days made decisions based on truth, not emotions, not convenience, not impulses. The problem most people face is that when the pressure hits, they trust their mood instead of their commitments. And your mood will always take the easy route. It will always try to convince you that short-term relief is more important than long-term results. Think about how many important decisions were made in moments of clarity. Maybe you decided to get healthy or build something or improve your life or break a limiting pattern. In that moment, you felt aligned, you felt intentional, you felt powerful. That decision came from truth, but later, maybe the next day, maybe the next week, your mood changed. You felt tired or discouraged or stressed, and suddenly that commitment didn't feel as strong. Suddenly the task that felt exciting now felt heavy. That shift is where most people fail, not because the dream wasn't worthy, but because they trusted the wrong voice. Your mood is like weather, constantly shifting, constantly changing. Sunny one minute, cloudy the next. You can't build a solid life on something so unstable. You can't build a legacy based on how you feel today. But commitments are like stone. They're the promises you made when you were connected to your truth. They are the markers that tell you who you're becoming. When you choose your commitments over your mood, you're choosing the strongest, most grounded part of you, the part that isn't swayed by the part that isn't manipulated by excuses, the part that knows what you want and refuses to compromise for temporary relief. And I want you to understand something deeply. Every time you trust your mood over your commitments, you weaken the relationship you have with yourself. You send a message to your own mind that says, I don't honor what I say. My feelings make the decisions, not my values. And when that pattern repeats, your confidence erodes, your self-belief cracks. You start doubting your own word because you've broken it too many times. That doubt doesn't come from failure. It comes from self-negotiation. But the opposite is also true. Every time you honor your commitments, even when you don't feel like it, you strengthen your identity. You create internal trust. You build a voice inside that says, when I say something, I mean it. That is the quiet foundation of power, when your word to yourself becomes unbreakable. That doesn't happen overnight. It happens one choice at a time, one difficult moment at a time, one uncomfortable action at a time. Imagine two voices inside you. One is your mood, loud, emotional, impulsive. The other is your commitment, steady, calm, grounded. The question is, which voice are you feeding? Which one do you follow? Which one gets to make the decisions that shape your future? If you follow the emotional voice, you will live a life ruled by circumstances. If you follow the committed voice, you will build a life ruled by intention. Your mood will always aim for the path of least resistance. That's its job. It wants comfort, safety, ease, but your commitment wants growth. Growth will always require some kind of friction. It will require choices that don't feel comfortable in the moment. It will require actions that challenge your mood. And that's where most people back down. Not because they can't do it, but because listen to the wrong voice. When you start trusting your commitments, you stop needing your feelings to align before you act. You stop waiting for the perfect moment. You stop negotiating with yourself. You move because you said you would. You act because you decided to. You follow through because it's who you are becoming, not because your mood approved of it. That's what separates the person who tries from the person who transforms. And I promise you this, there will always be moments when your mood tries to derail you. There will always be emotional storms, but that's why commitments exist, to anchor you when your emotions are unstable, to keep you steady when your mood is unpredictable, to keep you aligned when the emotional part of you wants to quit. Every time you choose your commitments over your mood, you're saying, I lead my life, my feelings don't. And that level of leadership, self-leadership, is the beginning of every breakthrough you've ever wanted. Because once you stop depending on how you feel, nothing can stop you, nothing can slow you, nothing can pull you off track. You become someone who shows up, someone who follows through, someone who does what needs to be done regardless of circumstance. Your mood can talk you out of your greatness. Your commitments can talk you into your destiny. Choose wisely. That's how you rise above your emotions and step into your purpose. Every time you take an action aligned with your plan, even the smallest action, you're not just moving forward on a task. You're building something much more important, your identity. And identity becomes destiny. The mistake so many people make is thinking progress only counts when it's big, when it's dramatic, when it's impressive enough to talk about. But the truth is, the real power isn't in the big breakthroughs. It's in the small wins you stack day after day, especially on the DA, when your mood is fighting against you. Because those wins, no matter how small, create a pattern. And that pattern becomes the story you tell yourself about who you are. You've experienced this before. You've had days when you didn't feel like doing anything, but you still showed up. You still took a step. Maybe the step was small, a short workout, a single disciplined action, a few minutes of focus, but you felt something afterward, didn't you? You felt proud, you felt aligned, you felt stronger. That feeling wasn't about the size of the action. It was about what the action meant. It meant you didn't fold. It meant you didn't let the mood win. It meant you honored the commitment. And that sense of honor, that sense of follow through is what builds a powerful identity. People chase motivation because they think motivation is what creates results. But what actually creates results is identity. The belief that I am the kind of person who, and that belief doesn't show up magically. You earn it, you shape it, you carve it into your mind through repetition. When you keep promises to yourself, you strengthen the identity of someone who follows through. When you break those promises, you strengthen the identity of someone who gives in to moods. Every action is a vote. Every choice is a message. You're always voting for the person you want to become or the person you're afraid of becoming. And here's the thing, small wins are more powerful than people realize because they're achievable every day. Big wins are rare. Big wins require timing, opportunity, circumstance. But small wins, they're available constantly. They're always within reach. They're always within your control. And that's what makes them so transformative. If you wait for big breakthroughs, you'll grow impatient. You'll feel stuck. Your mood will start dictating your progress. But when you learn to celebrate and accumulate the small wins, you become unstoppable because you're reinforcing progress every single day. Think about a person who wants to build strength. They don't walk into a gym once, lift something heavy, and walk out transformed. They show up repeatedly. Some days they feel strong, some days they feel exhausted, but they continue. And every rep, every single one contributes. Even the reps that feel light. Even the days that feel slow. The strength isn't built in one moment, it's built in the repetition. And that's exactly how personal identity is built. One rep at a time, one win at a time. Most people underestimate the power of these small wins. They think if it's not huge, it doesn't matter. But the truth is, small wins compound. They build internal momentum. They create a feedback loop inside you that says, I'm doing it, I'm moving forward, I'm capable. And when you accumulate enough of those wins, something clicks inside you. You start acting differently. You start thinking differently. You start expecting more from yourself. Your standards rise, your confidence grows, and suddenly goals that once felt overwhelming become natural. Not because they got smaller, but because you got bigger. A lot of people struggle with self-belief because they haven't built a track record with themselves. They've promised things they didn't follow through on. They said they'd start, but didn't. They said they'd change, but didn't. So now when they think about taking on something new, their mind responds with doubt, not because they're incapable, but because they haven't stacked enough evidence to counter that doubt. And the way you fix that isn't by waiting for a massive breakthrough. You fix it by stacking tiny wins day after day. You prove to your mind that you're someone who follows through. And once you build that proof, your mind begins to trust you. That trust T is what leads to confidence. And real confidence, deep grounded confidence, isn't loud. It doesn't need to be. It's quiet. It's steady. It's the confidence that comes from knowing you've shown up, not once in a while, but consistently. It comes from knowing you did the work even when you didn't want to, even when no one saw it, even when your mood wasn't in your favor. That kind of confidence is unshakable. And once you start stacking those small wins, your life changes in ways you don't even expect. Suddenly you're making choices more quickly. You're taking action more decisively. You're avoiding the traps that used to derail you. Why? Because you're not operating from emotion anymore. You're operating from identity. You've become someone who doesn't need the mood to align, someone who doesn't negotiate with themselves, someone who acts because they've built a foundation inside that can't be shaken. Small wins build the mindset. Small wins build the discipline. Small wins build the belief. And belief is what carries you to the finish line. The world celebrates big achievements, but the truth is those achievements are just the outcome. The real work, the work that transforms you, is the stacking of those tiny, often invisible victories that no one sees but you. And when you've stacked enough of those, when you've proven to yourself again and again that you follow through, a shift happens inside you. You no longer hope you can achieve something. You expect it. You no longer wish for progress. You create it. You no longer wait for the right mood. You move because you're aligned with the person you've become. Stack the small wins. They're shaping you in ways you don't even realize yet. You know what separates people who rise in life from the ones who stay stuck? It's not talent. It's not opportunity. It's not luck. It's consistency with their plan, even when the emotional weather inside them is storming. And one of the most powerful ways to create that consistency is to simplify the steps, break the noise, and make your plan so easy to follow that your mood never gets the chance to sabotage it. Because the truth is, most people don't fail because their goals are impossible. They fail because their plan is too complicated to execute when they're tired, stressed, discouraged, or overwhelmed. So the moment life punches them in the mouth, the plan collapses. Not because the plan was bad, but because it wasn't built for real life. You have to create a plan that's simple enough to follow on your worst day, not just your best. Think about that for a moment. Anyone can follow a plan when they're excited, when they're inspired, when everything is going their way. But greatness isn't built on the days you feel unstoppable. Greatness is built on the days you feel nothing, and yet you still take the next step. When you simplify your plan, you take back control from your emotions. You take back control from overwhelm. And suddenly, instead of talking yourself out of taking action, you talk yourself into doing just the next piece, just the next move, just the next easy win. That's where momentum is born. That's where discipline starts to feel possible. Because discipline isn't about doing everything at once. It's about doing the next thing long enough that your mind begins to trust you again. Think about how many people start their goals with massive enthusiasm. They create these big, beautiful plans filled with 10 steps, 20 rules, 30-day challenges, complicated routines. It feels exciting at first. It feels ambitious, but ambition without strategy becomes self-sabotage. Because as soon as their energy drops, and it will, their mood whispers, this is too much. You can't do all of this today. And because the plan was too heavy, they quit. D entirely instead of doing a smaller version of it. But imagine instead you had a plan that was simple enough that even on a low energy day, you could still execute it. Not perfectly, not dramatically, just consistently. Imagine a plan that's so clear, so trimmed down to essentials that your mood never gets a vote. All it gets to do is sit in the back seat while your commitment drives. That's the kind of plan that creates transformation. Let me give you a truth most people never realize. Complexity kills consistency. The more complicated your plan, the more opportunities your mood has to interrupt you. The more options you give yourself, the more excuses your mind will invent. But when you simplify, you remove hesitation, you remove negotiation, and you remove that internal tug of war that drains your willpower before you even start. It's like this. If you tell yourself you have to run 5 miles every morning, it's only going to take one night of poor sleep for you to quit. But if your plan says you move your body every morning and running is an option but not a requirement, suddenly you're free. On a high energy day, you might run. On a low energy day, you might walk for 10 minutes, but you still honored your plan. And because you honored it, your identity shifts. You begin to see yourself as someone who follows through. And when you see yourself that way, your brain starts cooperating instead of fighting you. The same principle applies to business, relationships, finances, everything. It's not about doing everything perfectly. It's about designing a plan that you can execute whether you're inspired or exhausted. And do you know what happens? When you work a simple plan consistently, your confidence grows, your momentum builds, your results compound, and you become unstoppable in a way you never were before because now you're not relying on motivation. You're relying on structure. There's power in structure. There's freedom in structure. And the moment you stop treating your mood as the boss and start treating your plan as the non-negotiable path, everything in your life gets better. Your stress goes down because you no longer have to think about what to do. You already know. Your anxiety decreases because you stop breaking promises to yourself. Your productivity increases because now your energy isn't scattered across random emotional impulses. And your self-worth grows because when you consistently do what you said you would do, your brain begins to trust you again. When your brain trusts you, your life expands. Some people say, but I want to feel inspired. I want to feel excited. And yes, inspiration feels good, but inspiration is a bonus, not a requirement. If you build your life waiting for inspiration, you'll be waiting forever. But if you build your life on systems that function regardless of how you feel, you're going to rise in ways most people only dream about. Simplicity gives you leverage over your mood. Simplicity makes the hard things feel possible. And simplicity keeps you in motion long enough for the results to show up. And when the results show up, even small ones, everything changes because now your brain sees evidence, and evidence is more powerful than emotion. Evidence rewires your identity. Evidence rewires your habits. Evidence rewires your future. But evidence can only be created through consistency. And consistency only survives when the plan is simple enough to repeat. So ask yourself, is your plan built for your best days, or is it built for your real days? Is it built for excitement, or is it built for resilience? Is it built for inspiration, or is it built for longevity? If you want a life where you grow regardless of how you feel, then design a plan that keeps you moving forward even when life hits you hard. Make your plan clear, simple, executable. Make it something your mood can't argue with. And once you do, your life will shift in ways that feel almost unfair to the person you used to be. Because the truth is simple. You don't rise by doing everything at once. You rise by doing the next right thing again and again and again until you become the kind of person your old self wouldn't even recognize. And it all begins when you follow your plan, not your mood. There comes a moment in every person's life where they have to make a decision about who's really in control, their vision or their excuses, their commitment or their emotions, their future or their comfort. And this moment isn't loud. It doesn't come with fireworks. It doesn't announce itself. It shows up quietly in the smallest decisions, in the little forks in the road where you get to choose whether you're going to honor your plan or obey your mood. And if you don't consciously choose, your mood will choose for you every single time. That's why you must build the strength to outgrow your excuses and override the emotional stories that try to keep you small. Because the truth is, excuses don't sound like excuses at first. They sound like logic. They sound like self-care. They sound like, I deserve a break, or I'll start fresh tomorrow, or this isn't the right time. And your mind is smart. It knows exactly how to package hesitation in a way that feels reasonable. But the life you want isn't built by what feels reasonable. It's built by what's necessary. It's built by what's required. It's built by showing up again and again, even when your head is full of reasons not to. You don't need fewer excuses. You need more ownership. And ownership starts the moment you stop arguing for your limitations. Every time you say, I can't, I don't feel like it, I'm tired, I'm stressed, we're not describing your reality. You're reinforcing a boundary that doesn't need to exist. You're rehearsing limitations that eventually become your identity. And if you repeat a limitation long enough, it stops being an excuse and becomes who you think you are. That's how people shrink themselves. That's how they build invisible cages. That's how they trade their power for a story that doesn't serve them. But you're not here to trade your future for a story. You're here to take back the pen and rewrite the script. When you outgrow your excuses, something incredible happens. Your brain starts to trust you again. It sees you showing up on days you normally wouldn't. It watches you push through resistance. It watches you take action despite fear. And that builds a kind of internal respect that nothing else can replace. When you respect yourself, you don't talk yourself out of greatness. You don't negotiate with your excuses. You don't let your emotions be the judge of your destiny. Because here's the thing, growth requires friction. It requires effort. It requires stretching beyond what feels good or easy. And excuses are designed to eliminate friction. They're designed to keep you in the zone of comfort. They're designed to protect you from discomfort, but discomfort is exactly what gives birth to transformation. You can either protect your comfort or protect your future, but you cannot protect both. The people who rise, the ones who break patterns, the ones who transform their lives from the inside out, those people don't have fewer excuses. They just stop believing them. They question them. They challenge them. They recognize the difference between a legitimate limitation and an emotional impulse, and they don't let temporary feelings create permanent outcomes. Every time you follow your mood instead of your plan, you send yourself a message that your feelings are stronger than your vision. And that creates doubt. It creates internal conflict. It creates an identity that believes I don't follow through. But every time you override your excuses, every time you follow your plan, instead of your mood, you send yourself a different message. I follow through. I do what I said I would do. I can rely on myself. That builds momentum. Momentum builds self-belief, and self-belief builds a life you can actually be proud of. You wonder why so many people feel stuck? It's not because they lack talent. It's not because they lack potential. It's not because life is unfair to them. It's because they keep choosing the path of least emotional resistance. And the path of least emotional resistance leads to a life of regret. They wait until they feel ready, but readiness is a trap. If you wait until your emotions approve, you'll never begin. If you wait until the fear goes away, you'll never move. If you wait until your mood aligns perfectly with your plan will stay buried inside you forever. The breakthrough comes when you stop waiting and start acting, even when it feels uncomfortable, especially when it feels uncomfortable, because discomfort is the signal that you're stepping into a new version of yourself. It's the sound of old habits dying and new ones forming. It's the sensation of expansion. And when you embrace that, when you lean into it instead of running from it, your excuses lose their power. You need to remember something powerful. Your emotions can scream, but they can't physically stop you from taking action. You can feel fear and still move. You can feel tired and still show up. You can feel overwhelmed and still take the next step. Action doesn't require permission from your mood. It requires a commitment to your future. And as you practice this day after day, moment after moment, you begin to develop emotional durability. You stop being controlled by every spike of anxiety, every wave of doubt, every drop in motivation. Your emotional storms still happen, but they don't throw you off your path anymore. You walk through them. You move with them. They lose their ability to distort your vision. You're no longer fragile. You're no longer reactive. You become anchored. And when you reach that level of internal strength, something extraordinary happens. You rise above the noise inside your own mind. You no longer give energy to excuses that once felt powerful. You see them for what they truly are, temporary emotions disguised as truth, and you realize you're capable of far more than you imagine, not because your emotions changed, but because your relationship with them changed. That's when you become dangerous in the best way, dangerous to your old patterns, dangerous to self-doubt, dangerous to the part of you that used to quit, because now your excuses no longer get to sit at the table. They no longer get to vote. They no longer get to shape your day. Your plan leads, your vision leads, your commitment leads. And once that happens, there's nothing left to do but rise. You outgrow excuses. The moment you choose your future over your feelings, there's a turning point in every journey where you realize something powerful. Discipline doesn't thrive in the moment. It thrives in the environment that moment lives in. You can have the strongest plan, the deepest desire, and the clearest vision. But if your environment is built on distraction, temptation, chaos, and emotional triggers, your plan never stands a chance. People blame themselves far too quickly. They call themselves lazy, unmotivated, inconsistent, undisciplined. But most of the time, it's not a character problem. It's an environment problem. Your environment either nourishes your commitment or starves it. It either chores you to your plan or pulls you back into your mood. And if you want to win consistently, if you want to follow through even when your emotions are unpredictable, you must create an environment where success becomes the default, not the exception. Think about this. How many times have you truly wanted to focus, but your phone kept lighting up? How many times did you promise you'd wake up early, but the room was too dark, too warm, too comfortable? How many times did you plan to avoid junk food, but the kitchen was filled with the very things you were trying to escape? We often blame our mood for breaking consistency, but most of the time, our environment is silently setting us up to fail. Your environment shapes your habits long before your mind realizes what's happening. It pulls the strings behind the scenes. It influences how you feel, what you focus on, how quickly you respond, and what you prioritize. Success becomes so much easier when you remove the friction that slows you down, when your workspace is clean, your tools are ready, your reminders are visible, and your distractions are out of reach. It doesn't take nearly as much willpower to follow your plan. You don't need to feel like it. When everything around you makes action feel natural, discipline stops being a battle. It becomes a flow. But when your environment is cluttered, noisy, chaotic, filled with triggers and shortcuts to comfort, you're constantly fighting uphill. You're not resisting the task, you're resisting the environment. And that drains your energy before you even begin. If you put a seed in the wrong soil, it doesn't matter how hard the seed tries, it won't grow. But put that same seed in fertile soil with the right amount of light and space, and it grows effortlessly. You are no different. You are influenced by the space you live in, the people you spend time with, the anchors you allow around you. And the moment you recognize this, the moment you take control of it, everything changes. The people in your life matter, not because you need approval, but because humans are wired to mirror the energy of their surroundings. If you're surrounded by people who complain, you begin to complain. If you're surrounded by people who quit when it gets uncomfortable, quitting becomes normal. If you're surrounded by people who follow their moods instead of their commitments, it becomes easy to justify doing the same. Energy is contagious, and so is mediocrity, but so is discipline, so is hunger, so is ambition, so is a high standard. When you place yourself around people who talk about growth, who stay committed, who demand more of themselves, something inside you rises to match it. You start elevating naturally. Their discipline becomes a mirror that challenges you to level up. But let's talk about the deeper part, the part most people avoid. Sometimes the environment you need to change isn't your room, your desk, or your schedule. Sometimes it's the identity you've built around yourself. The internal environment, the stories you've been telling yourself for years, the rules you created when you didn't know better, the beliefs you inherited from your upbringing, the emotional patterns you cling to because they feel familiar. These things form an internal environment that either lifts you or limits you. If you keep telling yourself, this is just who I am, you're locking yourself inside a room you built, and the door is open the entire time. You just have to walk through it. If your internal environment is filled with self-doubt, hesitation, fear of failure, fear of judgment, or shame from the past, then no matter how strong your plan is, a part of you will sabotage your progress. You might take action for a while, but you won't sustain it. You'll fall back into old patterns, not because your plan was wrong, but because your internal environment didn't support the version of you that plan required. You can't build a future with the beliefs that built your past. You have to upgrade the environment within you. And you do that the same way you upgrade the environment around you, by removing what doesn't belong, adding what strengthens you, and setting up cues that remind you of who you're becoming. This could be as simple as placing a goal on your wall where you see it every day, as simple as creating a morning routine that grounds you, as simple as eliminating the noise that pulls you into old emotional habits, as simple as catching yourself in the moment when an old story tries to pull you back. Your environment is full of triggers. Your job is to choose ones that support your plan, not ones that validate your mood. Imagine waking up every day in a space designed for clarity, focus, strength, and follow through. Imagine your habits unfolding easily because the environment nudges you toward the right action. Imagine being surrounded by people who fuel your ambition instead of draining it. Imagine having internal beliefs that reinforce your commitment rather than weaken it. That's not a fantasy, that's a choice. And the moment you choose to build that environment, you remove 80% of the resistance you've been struggling with for years. When the environment is aligned with your vision, following your plan stops being a fight. It becomes natural. It becomes automatic. It becomes who you are. Create an environment that makes success unavoidable.